Go ahead, Matt, we're recording.
Okay, I guess we're here to hear a report from John and Jeff on the winter sports and the potential inviting of the winter spectators. So go ahead and take it away, John.
Jeff, I don't know if you want to give the board a brief background of just the timeline of the guidance and talk a little bit about just the winter season, the dates, the sports that we're offering, and then we can certainly fill in the gaps and answer any questions that the board may have regarding what the guidance and the return to athletics entails.
Sure. So basically, 3:00 on the 22nd of January, I was getting ready to leave, and my phone starts blowing up, and a bunch of text messages came through saying that the governor had, authorized county health departments to access and allow for high-risk winter sports, or as they were designated, high risk. So literally that weekend, we were all kind of scrambling, and with a start date of February 1st for practices. So the better part of the last week to 10 days, I've been in about six Zoom meetings with Section 5 leadership and the Genesee Region ADs to try to come up with our plan and following the state guidelines and as far as what we were going to do. So we've done that. And basically what we're looking at is a season that started yesterday for practice and will end March 13th, that's Saturday. And, with that, a 10 or 11 game schedule has been worked up, consisting of at least for the majority of our league, and certainly for us, all schools that are presently in the Genesee Region League. So we're not playing anybody outside of our league schedule. So, that's kind of where we're at. Like I said, it's been a situation where just trying to make sure that we're following the state guidelines to the letter, interpret, and just, go from there, and keep it as simple as we can, staying within the confines of what they've laid out with their return to play document that they put out about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago.
So the boys and the girls are practicing this week. Our first home game is next Wednesday, I believe, with the girls playing. The times for that have been adjusted. So I believe the JV begins at 5:30 and the varsity begins at 7:30. Right.
The idea being, normally those games are 5:30 and 7. We as a league thought it was a good idea to extend that out another half an hour. That allows for a couple things. It allows for JV parents to leave the gym before the varsity parents come in. We did something similar to that in the fall with soccer. It allows for the cleaning of the players' bench area or the players' chairs and the spectator seating, and really cuts down on any congregation of people between the two games. So everybody in the league, through our discussions, thought that was the best way to proceed, and we gave that extra half an hour in there to clear gyms and clean gyms and all of that goes into it.
So just like Jeff has been meeting with the athletic directors, we've been meeting with Paul Pettit on a weekly basis and the other superintendents. Part of the NISFA guidance, which is just guidance for the winter and fall season, is that they are allowing 2 spectators per athlete at this time. In talking with the Genesee Valley superintendents, we kind of had a consensus that we would allow 2 spectators per athlete just for our home fans, that our spectators, our parents, would not be able to travel to the other districts to watch. We've agreed to live stream the games where possible. We'll certainly do that here. And so currently that seems to be the consensus, is that when the games start, with the guidance in place, that we would allow 2 spectators per athlete, but just for our home fans, and not visiting visiting teams.
Oh, Matt, your mic is off.
Sorry. Is everybody on board with this, Jeff? Are there any opt-outs in our region? All the teams that will be playing, we can expect as a visiting team, they'll have home fans in attendance. Is that accurate?
That is correct. Obviously everybody's gym set up a little bit different. Some have bleachers on one side, both sides, but in configuring the gymnasiums, the same criteria are going to be obviously, separation of players as best as possible, separation of spectators as best as possible. And to answer your question, mate, yeah, everybody's on board with this. They think that the 2 spectator for home teams is certainly doable and work within the confines of what we're trying to accomplish. And like John mentioned, games will be live streamed. One of the things that I suggested was to create a spreadsheet or a list of the avenues that will get these games out. Some people were doing Zoom, some people were doing Facebook Live, some people were doing YouTube, and to have that list out to share with parents and grandparents and whoever as early as we can would eliminate, a 5:15 phone call or a text message from somebody saying, hey, we're watching the game at Wheeland Chile. Where can we access that? So I think, trying to cover all bases, everybody in our league is certainly on board with the parameters that we've set up.
Okay.
So you said, Jeff, that someone's going to compile that list?
Yeah, we actually have a meeting tomorrow, Lorna. So the idea is to just basically, come up with a list. When we might not have a certain link, and speaking with Rob, every home game that we do will have a different link address, but we can get that at least the platform out there, and then I can send out those links ahead of time, and I can get those back, and we can put those out on whatever medium we have, whether it be our school Facebook page or Parent Square or whatever, so that the people that want to watch can access it.
Those are for home games or for also the away
Well,
games?
we'll do them for both. So when we play away, I will get from their athletic director whatever avenue, whatever platform that school's using, and then we can push that out for our people as well.
Okay, thanks.
John, do you want to speak to chaperones, custodial staff usage to make your plan work, and SRO usage as the potential heavy to make sure everything's being complied with, masks in the stands, et cetera, distancing?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, the games are anticipated to start at 5:30 and 7:30. For the spectators, they will not be allowed into the building until 5:10, until 20 minutes before tip-off. They will have to enter through the front of the middle high school entranceway, not through the back parking lot. We will have a chaperone stationed here at the table where they will do temperature checks of all the visitors. The visitors will have to sign in and have to sanitize their hands before entering the gymnasium. The rest of the school, for the most part, will be shut off, so they'll be directed right to the gymnasium. And the front set of bleachers on the right-hand side as you enter the gymnasium will be for spectators only. What we have done, and I don't know if you can actually see this picture here, but we have already marked off 18 pairs of seats. So, mom or dad, or, mom and sibling, or dad and son, they can come. Each athlete will have 2 passes. So obviously they'll have to show their passes that they're allowed to be at the JV and varsity game. And they will be basically sitting where we have designated the spots, completely social distancing. And the same goes for the visiting team. The other set of bleachers on the far end of the gymnasium is for the opposing team. We have individually marked off 6 feet. So obviously when they're on the bench, they're social distancing as well. Our team will be on the far end where the normal scores table is. We have set up those individual chairs. Those will run along the side of that gymnasium, again, spaced out. At this time, Jeff has mentioned that During game time, the kids will actually be assigned a seat. So if they go in and substitute and then come back out, they'll go back to their own seat. And so that's really what we're going to have. The SRO has signed up for all of our home games. I will have Officer Westcott there. All the administrators, we actually created a link for us to, kind of cover. So there'll be an administrator at every single game, if not, two to start off. And then when the JV game is over, we will clear the gymnasium. And Jordan says that he will have an extra cleaner on to wipe down the individual chairs, and we will use the Clorox machine to quickly but effectively clean the both bleacher sections before the next game. And then we will have people sign in, again, with temperature checks. If people are just coming from the varsity game, again, they will not be allowed to be in school 20 minutes before tip-off. So we ask the community not to show up early thinking that they're going to get in. And again, we'll also have chaperones just making sure that people are masking. All spectators must mask all the time. Same with the coaches. It's a great protocol. I think safety is very much our first priority, and we can certainly swing it. The capacity of the gym is about around 625 people. We're only talking at the very most, looking at possibly the JV boys having about 14 to 15 kids on there. You're talking an extra 30 parents there. Certainly we can spread them out. And you're really talking less than 10% of the gymnasium actually to capacity. So certainly it's under the 50% capacity for some of these venues per the guidance. So obviously we have the space. We are separating the teams from each other. They will not be on the same sidelines, and we can certainly make it work. And I think Jeff did a great job with Jordan, coming up with these protocols, and I do think we certainly go above and beyond what the return to play is actually asking us to do as a district. So,
have they talked about quarantining? So I'll assume that if a fan is in attendance, there would be no impact on the players, because that would really stink if a team had to quarantine because of a fan. But then also, how long will the quarantining be if a person on either team or the referee? I'm assuming, is everybody going to have to quarantine in that instance, thinking about all these players?
Correct. So we did discuss that with Paul Pettit last week, and really it's a case by case basis. It's you kind of tilt your head a little bit in regards to that. The coaches and the players really need to think about how much time they are on the court with each other. The coaches know who their starting five is. They know who's really playing a lot. I will say that if you have kids that don't get into the game or get into the game at a very limited time, they will not have to quarantine. The fans will not have to quarantine. It's really just the players playing and playing a majority of the game, depending on who the positive case could possibly be, that would have to quarantine. Unfortunately, though, when you throw in how the contact tracing works, if you do have a positive athlete on your team, probably knowing that you were practicing the day or the 2 days before for a few hours, you're probably going to have to quarantine the whole team. Your season could possibly be over. It would be at least 10 days. And as Jeff mentioned, with how quick the season's going to come and go, it could be about a 2-week stint that you are done. But again, that's a case-by-case basis. The quarantining rules are a little different while in school compared to actually running up and down the court and sweating, and the possibility that a lot of these athletes, when they're playing, will not be wearing a mask. And so I don't have a definitive answer for you, but as far as the spectators go, if all of a sudden a parent showed up and they were now positive, we wouldn't have to quarantine the team. Maybe the child of that parent on the team, but there isn't really an increased risk of spread if we have spectators because they are so far away from the court and from each other. So,
I'll give you just one more question because I know everybody else has questions too. Jeff, is there a minimum number of games that needs to be reached in order for a team to qualify for the playoffs?
Yeah, so right now they've condensed the sectionals. They're going to work sectionals within 1 week. Typically, it's an open tournament. Everybody makes sectionals. You can always opt out, but it's an open tournament. So this year, because of the scheduling, it's going to be an 8-team sectional tournament. Basically, they're looking at schedule or playing games on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or in the boys' case, I think Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, with our season finale being the Saturday prior. So there's not much turnaround time. So that the minimum number of games they've set, I believe, is 6. So you come out of the blocks, and if you're quarantined after week 1 or day 1 or whatever, you could get your 6 in, or vice versa. Maybe it's middle or the end of the season. So. And they ran into, I guess, a little bit of this issue in the fall. They're not going to cancel a sectional tournament, or they're not going to, if a school is on quarantine, or a group of kids is from a team and they can't play, sectionals will continue. They're not going to push sectionals back a week or even a couple days to accommodate teams. They just can't do that with too many variables there. So 6 is the number. And like I said, with we've got 11. I think we've got 11 scheduled. So roughly a 2 week a 2 week window. If we were to quarantine, you could probably, depending upon when it falls, you could still kind of squeeze out 6 games. Anything more than that would be tough.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question about the locker rooms. Are we going to have enough manpower or woman power to disinfect or clean the locker rooms?
So the locker rooms are going to be used on a very limited basis. The visiting teams will come in and will only use those locker rooms to quickly change. They will not be storing any of their belongings there. They will bring them out into the gym area. Same with our team. They will be used only really for, a quick halftime message coaching, but we will not be storing any of their belongings in there. So Jordan is aware of that. Yes, the night crew will go in, but we're not going to be, spraying down the locker rooms in between the games because, again, they're going to be very limited usage. They're not going to be using the showers or anything of that nature. So, just a quick change if they need to, and then a quick, 8-minute time in there if they, at halftime to coach up your team. But they're not going to be used to have storage or have kids, hanging out there for a large amount of time.
Okay, thank you.
So about the discussion is like this is a done deal. So let me ask some questions about that. Are there also going to be modified games as well as JV and varsity?
Lorna, the plan is to have modified. They're scheduled to start practice on Monday, the 8th. Same end date, so the 13th. So it's really a condensed season. We actually don't have a schedule yet. We're going to work on that tomorrow at our meeting. The plan is going to be very similar to what it was for the fall with modified, which is basically 2 designated dates, partly because many districts, I'm sorry. We designated what we did was we designated in the fall, like Wednesdays and Saturdays for modified soccer. And the reason we did that was in many districts, if they're hybrid, trying to get modified kids back to school is difficult at times. It's easier for obviously JV and varsity kids. So we thought in the fall that it would make sense to say, okay, Wednesday's modified. We can push those schedules out to parents in other districts that are hybrid so that they know, okay, we've got to get our kids, to school either to, play a game or catch a bus. And quite honestly, Saturdays for a lot of districts is better for busing situations. You know, a lot of districts are having trouble with busing and with the busing regulations. So Saturdays kind of opens up that a little bit for them. So our plan is to go Wednesday, Saturdays. Right now, that would be 8 blocks of games. You know, doesn't preclude you from adding a game if you could find a spot for it, for sure. I mean, you know, their schedule is actually a little more open because they're not playing every day or every other day. So that's the plan right now. You know, and in talking with some of our kids, they're thrilled about having the opportunity. So we'll finish that schedule or finalize that schedule tomorrow as far as who we're playing. But right now it's Wednesdays and Fridays for the modified kids.
Wednesdays and Fridays or Wednesdays and Saturdays?
I'm sorry, Wednesdays and Saturdays. Wednesdays and Saturdays.
So all the practices will be scheduled around games in both buildings?
Yeah, I was working on that some of this afternoon. So between the elementary and high school, we like to have the modified kids go right after school. We've always done that just from a rides perspective and get them in and get them out. So they would be, you know, one group might be in the elementary, one group would be in the high school. And really it makes scheduling pretty easy starting next week because one of us will be playing every day. So if away games, for sure, it makes the gyms really available. But that's the plan, that the mod boys will be in one gym, mod girls will be in another gym, and the JV and varsity kids would probably be later because it's easier for us to work around that.
Can I ask, why are the athletes being seated 6 feet apart when they play together every day?
Good
Because
question.
the guy,
Yep,
sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Jake.
No, go ahead. You're going to say the same thing I am, I think.
Let me see. You go first.
Because that's what the state guidelines are saying right now.
Okay.
We saw it in the fall. Many districts, set up. They had all different configurations with try to keep the kids 6 feet apart. Our plan is going to be with our sideline, with our chairs, just to set those up 6 feet away from each other. And like I said, my son had a great idea about just, why don't, we were watching an NBA game, why don't we have designated chairs for designated kids? And we're, that way you're kind of still limiting it even more, which I thought was a really good idea. Obviously kids might make mistakes and sit wherever, but if they have a designated seat that they are, sitting at, whether they're in or out of the game, and that might make a lot of sense too. So other than following the state guidelines, Lorna, there's not really a reason I could give you.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the players that aren't actually in the game will be sitting masked as well, 6 feet apart.
You said, John, there will be at least one administrator at each game to start with.
Yes, if
why-
not two or three.
That bothered me a little bit to start with.
Okay. There'll be an administrator at every game. I will be probably at the first 4 or 5 games. We've come up with a list that every game is covered by an administrator, whether it's myself or Mr. Peterson, Mr. Montroy, or Mrs. Gaylord. Tim has signed up to be at all the games, so maybe I misspoke. You will have an administrator at every game, if not 2 or 3 of us there.
Okay. That makes me feel better that there will be an administrator at every game.
Yeah.
Jeff or John, however, can you guys, did we have a plan, or did you guys sit together? Did we have a plan for when we re-entered for low risk winter sports, just like what we came off of? Did anybody sit down and coordinate something for that? Like for swimming, our only thing that we did?
A lot of that, Jackie, was dictated from both the state and Section 5. One of the issues I know that we discussed inside of our league with swimming pools and spectators was just lack of room in there. A lot of those pools have very little, if any, seating for the spectators on a normal basis, and then trying to spread them out and do what you have to do following the guidelines. So I know that one of the decisions from Section 5 was to really try to limit, and one of the things we also played off of with our season was that Monroe County had their swimming in the fall. Mm-hmm. So we, some of the leagues that ran swimming in the winter kind of took their lead from what Monroe County was doing, and they had eliminated spectators in most cases, and again, because of the size of the pool area itself, really didn't allow it to be configured in a way that allowed spectators. I mean, we have one of the bigger areas inside of a pool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that really, I'm sorry,
not so much in regards to the spectators for that, but I know the guidelines were totally separate coming into sports in general, low risk winter sports. There wasn't even an allowance. That wasn't really even a guidance to have spectators. That's a moot point.
Right.
But as far as our district, did we have even a discussion as to how even returning to sports would happen in a plan? Because I mean, I know it. I mean, I have a swimmer, so I can speak to this. So I do know there was not a single administrator involved in the entire time of the entire swim season. Not one administrator was in that building to make sure that swimming and the low risk winter sports were taken off good with some safety protocols. That having said that, that's just the specifics for the plan moving forward is really good. And this discussion is really good to see that we actually have that, because that was not in place from what I gather, if that's what you guys are saying, correct?
I mean, I'm just talking, I mean, from my end, like I said, it was basically because low risk sport. I mean, there were very few guidelines other than the ones that are pretty much common, which is, try to keep the kids apart, try to stay masked up as best you can in the pool and those things. I mean, there really wasn't, I think that the delineation of high risk and low risk, I think, is what kind of threw everybody into a frenzy a little bit. And from my perspective.
For sure, reasonably so. And I know there was an issue with the first meet when we had officials didn't really know where to go. They had to call some administrators. They didn't know which door to go in. They didn't have a health screen. So those things falling short in a re-entry to any type of thing, just coming off after our pretty much shutdown, and that was the first event that was occurring, we didn't have much of a plan in place. So it's really good to see that this is, and it really looks like it's much more thought out than the non-existent plan that existed for the re-entry of that. But that was a little bit concerning to in my perspective, that we almost had a shutdown just recently again because of a potential COVID on the swim team. So luckily that didn't happen, but we didn't really have much of a plan for that. So that was more of my wanting some more information. And I think this looks pretty, much more planned out, which I think sets a lot of people at ease moving forward with that. So hopefully a lot of these answers will be sufficient to get things pushed through.
Who will meet the officials and answer those questions about where they go, and do they have a place to change, and will they be separated, or how does that, will there be someone in charge designated to greet and meet the officials?
In a normal year, Lorna, we have that as well, and that's the plan this year. So we'll have that chaperone that is designated for that front door. We'll greet the official, and I'm assuming, and I'm not speaking for the officials board, but typically for a 5:30 start, a lot of those officials will get here at 4:45. I'm quite sure that their time frames have been adjusted slightly, just being in buildings. So, but we'll have a chaperone designated for that front door. Officials that come here know that that's the door they're supposed to come into, especially if they've worked here before. They'll greet them. They'll show them where the officials, changing room is. I know because I spoke with the official the other day that they've been told, don't plan on being able to shower and those types of things, very similar to what John said regarding the athletes. And then that person will be, once they escort the officials down and show them where they're changed, then they'll be responsible for, doing the temperature checks and getting people signed in and seeing the passes and all that other protocol that we have.
Will the chaperone at the front door have a walkie-talkie or some way of connecting with our SRO or with an administrator in case there are non-compliant visitors?
Yes, the chaperones that are usually in a normal year have walkie-talkies and radios for that purpose. Yes, and they're located in the main office. We'll make sure that there's, direct communication with at least an administrator, if not the SRO, if not both of us, if they're at the front there. Absolutely.
For me, I think it just goes back to this idea of risk, right? And for the last year, we've all been assessing our moves and deciding how risky each of our moves are, one way or the other. If it's from going out to Alex's or going to a friend's house, it's always in the back of our minds. I think when this first came up, not necessarily from any email from John or Jeff or anybody, I can remember thinking to myself, holy cow, I can't even go to a Sabres game. And you mentioned the NBA there, Jeff. I couldn't go to one of those either. I'd have to drive to Cleveland because I can't go to Toronto and watch the Raptors, and they're only letting 300 people in their building, right, out of 19,000 people. So, you have a plan here, and I still think no matter what you do, there's still a risk. Now, is the risk what I thought it was initially when it came out? No, I think this plan really mitigates any real risks that we do have, and I feel more comfortable. But I've had a lot of questions, and they've been answered today for me personally. I don't see a lot of holes in this plan, Jeff or John. I think your entrances and exits, I think the idea of the cleaning in between, I don't have any issue. But at the end of the day, though, it's still a risk, and it jeopardizes our initial goal. And if we all remember what that initial goal was, it's for 5 days of instruction. So there's going to be people that fall on both sides of this fence. Yeah, let's go back to sports. Or no, I want to make sure my kid stays in. And sports is really, we're only talking about 40 plus kiddos. I'd like to go back and see what happens. I'd like to see what happens here with the plan that we have in place, because I really don't feel like we're jeopardizing our original goal, is our 5 days in. Well, I'm going to ask questions, and I will today, and I will tomorrow, and I'm going to continue to ask questions because I think that that's our position here. And I'm hoping that you guys are going to continue to answer them for us. Mm-hmm. And I think you did a really nice job of that today. And I'd like to just move forward. With the idea that we're taking a small calculated risk. And hopefully it's going to benefit every one of those kids that are on those teams that are going to have this very, very unique opportunity to play a little Oakfield basketball, which has been a long time coming. So thank you, Jeff, and thank you, John, for the plan that you put in front of us today.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Justin. I don't agree with, or I agree with you 100%. There's always a small calculated risk. Moving forward, this also provides us the opportunity, because in less than a month, you're going to be looking at volleyball. And currently right now, we're forging ahead with our musical. And so we're trying to use this guidance to, have families and spectators, and, next thing you know, it's probably going to change, but come March and April, now we're going to be talking football, and obviously that's outside. So, moving forward, I think this is a great start. I think, having spectators at a venue such as this, which is larger than maybe just the auditorium or the pool area, I think this will like you said, there's a small calculated risk, but I think it'll be able to change and tweak our plans as we go forward, and like you said, to keep moving forward, because we're going to want spectators back in these buildings for all those events. The musicals, concerts, how is that all going to look when hopefully we get some official guidance on that. So I completely agree with you. Yes, and there's always a small calculated risk, even if we weren't in COVID, to have things go wrong. But I appreciate the comments.
I have a question. I don't know how large or small the risk is of having spectators in. And I do wonder, was there any thought given to a phase-in? Not an original idea to me, but an intriguing one, where you have a week of practice and a week of games where they're all sweating and breathing on each other continuously for hours. And then if our numbers didn't go up, then you allow spectators in. And then even, of course, if you as a group of superintendents have already decided not to allow visitor spectators, but I could have seen allowing visitor spectators after a couple of weeks of successful home spectators. Was there any thought given, or if thought was given, to a phase-in plan? Why was it rejected in order to mitigate that risk?
I don't want to say that there was conversation about a phase-in plan. I mean, obviously, the girls and the boys have been practicing. They'll get their 6 practices in, so it'll be a little over a week that they've been, like you said, together, sweating, what all. We as superintendents don't believe really at all, again, by having these parents come in and being separated as they will be here, that there's any sort of increased risk for any of our athletes. If there was, they'll catch it at home, just because they're in the same household. So just having people spread out in the stands, we don't think that there's any sort of increased risk for our athletes playing that's going to put them in any sort of danger by having a handful of parents. We did talk about having, the visitors as well from the other teams. But I guess part of that phase in is we said, you know what, why don't we just have our own home parents there? Just so we can control that. We know our home parents, we know our community. And so we were confident in saying that we could, start with them. So part of that phase in is maybe after 2 or 3 weeks of this, if things are running great, then maybe, for the sectionals or whatever, you can bring, both teams, spectators in. But, we didn't really necessarily talk about a phase in. It was just what we were comfortable with in starting. I don't know if Jeff, you have.
No, I think that's right. And sectionals are going to be hosted by the team with the higher seed. Obviously, they're eliminating neutral sites and all of that type of thing. So I would imagine, and I have a Section 5 meeting next week, but I would imagine one of the topics is going to be what about sectionals? And if we get 5 weeks into this season and Oakfield, Alabama is hosting a sectional game, is it just going to be Oakfield, Alabama parents, or if are 2 per athlete going to be allowed in from, part of that's going to obviously be on what, we all decide, you all decide. Part of that will probably be some guidance from Section 5 as to what, they're just going to throw it out there. But that will create a unique situation, because obviously usually it's 1 or 2 rounds of sectionals and then you're playing at a neutral site for a semi or a final. So that will be a little different. And I imagine that I could certainly see that parents from the visiting side wanting to be able to go to a sectional, semifinal, or final game. But that hasn't been discussed, Lorna, at this point. I can imagine that might come up, but it hasn't yet.
Okay.
You know what, Lauren, too, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn, Jeff, but I think it's also based on section. So if you look at Section 6, they're not allowing spectators in Section 6. And what they're going to do, Lorna, I'm pretty sure, maybe I'm misinformed here, but I'm pretty sure they're doing 2 weeks. And then starting February 22nd, then they're going to start to allow fans. And they are talking about kind of what you're referring to, I think, more of that slow release. I don't know how else to phrase that, and I think that it's going to be dependent upon the section that we're in, and that's going to kind of dictate what our guidelines are. So if we were in Section 6, let's say we're Roy Hart, for example, right, John? Roy Hart isn't allowing spectators right now, if I'm mistaken. I think I'm right? I think,
yeah.
So it really, I get we're autonomous and we can kind of make a decision there based on what's good for Oakfield, but I think some of that's going to be, what is the rest of the section doing and what's the GR League doing? Because I also think, within your GR League, Jeff, you've met and you've kind of made sure that we're all on the same page. So you're not different than Kendall, and Kendall's not going to, be different than Pembroke or whatever.
Right. And that was similar to what we did in the fall with soccer and try to follow the same guidelines. I know Section 6's calendar is a little different than Section 5's too, which probably lends itself to what you brought up, Justin, in that, Section 6's basketball season goes until the 27th of March. So it's 2 weeks longer. So they've got a little bit more I guess, flexibility to do some of those types of things.
Sure.
But yeah, each section kind of works within the guidelines that the state puts out there, and then does what, their leadership and they think is best. So that was what Section 6 came up with for their play dates and their criteria.
I think my point though too, Jeff, is that opening up the door to home spectators is actually kind of a big deal when you think about it in comparison to other sections that are restricting that. So I think, I can see if I had a senior or a child that I've worked really hard with to make it onto a varsity team and not be able to be at the away games, at least I'm having an opportunity to be there at the home ones and live stream that, which are too. And I've even heard schools saying the live stream is too expensive. And that they're not willing to pay that cost, where I don't think that's an issue with us. And I don't even see that as being a real good point, but I feel like we're opening the doors here and allowing a good opportunity for parents. It may not be the complete door that all parents are looking for, but it's something.
I have just a couple more questions. This was one from your list, Justin.
Sure.
Bathrooms, cleaning between bathrooms, number of bathrooms open, any number of restriction on number of people in the bathrooms. Is that in your plan?
We're going to open up additional bathrooms. The two that are out front here outside the auditorium will be open. Obviously, those are limited. So the ones down the hallway towards the middle school, the boys and the girls' bathrooms there, those will be open.
Okay.
Like I said, we'll have to monitor their usage. One of the concerns that, again, we're going to have to obviously, review and watch is halftime. We don't want all the spectators to get up at halftime and then go congregate in the lobby. So, obviously we're not having concessions, but, it's just people are going to want to get up and start talking, and we're just going to kind of monitor, things like that. So, but we are going to have the bathrooms open. And like I said, Jordan's going to have an additional staff member here, and we'll see, how quickly and effectively we can, clean such items. And, that'll be something that we'll monitor with each game.
And then temperatures taken. There's a controversy, I know, over how effective it is to take people's temperatures. When the visiting athletes, coaches, officials come in, are they going to have their temperature taken as well? It's somebody earlier today said to me, it's our house if we want to make that extra thing. Should we, could we, would
Sure.
we?
So the officials will have their temperature taken. Any spectator will have their temperature taken. But per the guidance, the teams that are coming over here, and obviously the athletes are in school, they're filling out that daily health screening form like our athletes are. And so really, and I had mentioned that in my email, it's really on them. When Jeff goes and he takes his team over to Pembroke to play a game, they're abiding by that. All of our students were in school. They had, their temperature screening. They're all healthy. So really, it's the outside visitors that won't be filling out these daily health screening forms and that aren't in school that we have to make sure that we, check their temperatures. So
We know that Jeff would never put snow on the forehead of a player. He really wants to play.
Would never
But
do
we
that.
know that about the other coaches. Or should we take temperature of anybody who walks in the building? Just a question.
Yeah, I mean, it's not gonna take any more time. The only concern I do have is that will there be somebody here? If a team does show up at 4:30 for a 5:30 game, we may then be kind of running around saying, "Hey, where are your 12 basketball players? Where's this?" And then the officials are coming in. So that is something that we can look at. But at this point, we're more concerned about the actual adults coming in that on a day-to-day basis probably don't check their temperatures, and certainly the officials knowing that the athletes had been checked daily through the school and the daily health screening from where they're coming from.
Okay, thanks. And then we have discussed at prior board meetings how our Jordan and his crew are working to capacity and having a struggle to keep everything sanitized and cleaned in all the big congregating rooms and in the individual rooms. So where are the resources coming from for us to supply an extra cleaner on the night crew?
He's utilizing subs. So when we have a home game, he's staffing an extra person for us. I will also tell you that we had our administrative meeting this morning, and you had mentioned about having administrators there, at least one with every home event. We are certainly helping out. So we're all chipping in. I know how to fully use that 360 machine, so I have no problem spraying down the bleachers and, doing that sort of thing. So really, we're all just going to chip in. If we find that we're short, I've told Jeff to have at least 3 chaperones at the events. And if we find the need that we possibly need 4 or 5, we will certainly do that.
And we have the financial and personnel resources to make that happen?
Yes.
Okay.
Hopefully, Jeff, maybe to Lorna's point and question there with these kids, I've heard from at least one parent, school's great. I'm sure these kids love being in school, but for some of these athletes, boy, they sure don't want to risk their season getting shut down for 10 or 14 days. So your point of a symptomatic kid on the team, and I don't know if you're hearing anything, Jeff, but like I say, I've heard from a parent. I think hopefully we'll see an increased level of vigilance from these kids with mask wearing and responsibility. And if they are sick to that degree, Lorna, hopefully these kids are smart enough to get the heck away from that team and not put that whole team's season at risk.
That's a big burden to put on a young kid who's dying to play. But I agree with you.
If it's the sectional championship, it'd be different. If it's a regular season game, get the heck out of there. Yeah. Hey, Jeff, on the 5:30 and 7:30 start time, is that enough time, or John, is that enough time to accomplish this changeover and the cleaning and everything you're looking to do?
Matt, I would tell you that it certainly is for the boys. And the JV boys games, they're going to be typically done by most nights 6:45, 10 to 7. Those games go pretty fast. So you're talking really almost a 40-minute window to get the JV parents out of there. Like John mentioned earlier, we're not letting varsity parents in until 7:10. That's going to be communicated with all of our parents. They can wait in their car, whatever. So for the boys' games, absolutely not a problem. The girls' games will be a little tighter, perhaps. Most of those games go by, they're mostly done by 7. But I think that extra, and I guess ultimately, if we start 5 or 10 minutes late, normal, we might do that in a normal year anyway. We have those games scheduled for 5:30 and 7, and we might start that varsity game at 7:10. I think starting at 10 minutes late to make sure we've cleaned and to make sure we've gotten the gym cleared is a far better situation than trying to make sure we get it started on time and don't do what we need to do in between. So I would hope, and I'm pretty confident that most parents would say, we'll wait 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes if we need to clean out what we need to clean and make it safe for everybody, including themselves and their kids. So, I would think most nights the 2-hour window is fine. And if game goes overtime or whatever, and that varsity game's a 7:40 start instead of 7:30 start, well, that's a normal year anyway. Being quite honest with you, that happens frequently. So, I think, being that it's your home parents and being that, they completely understand, everything that's involved with this, I think that's going to work pretty well. And we'll get a test of it the first week. We'll see how it goes. We have a home game. The boys play away on the 9th. We're at home on the 10th, and we'll get a pretty good feel if that window works. And to be honest with you, if it's not working, then we can bump those start times back a little bit if need be. I think we'll be okay, but we can monitor that for sure.
Thanks.
So how many home games, if you don't mind, how many home games are we even talking here? We're really for each.
Yeah, 5 and 5. And the mods would be 4. So, and my guess is for the boys and girls, like I said, 5 home games, usually, 2 a week or 2 and 3 a week. And then with the modified kids, really, with those being 8 blocks, they'd probably play 2 home on Wednesdays and 2 homes on Saturdays. And like I said, the Saturday dates work. I mean, the boys, I think the boys play at home on one Saturday, and those games are going to be at 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the afternoon instead of being at night, which I think makes some sense too. So, so yeah, we're not talking a ton of home games for sure. It's not like it's a normal 20-game season.
Right. And I think that's, we have to acknowledge, I think, in general, I mean, that's what I think the people, as Justin said, you're going to have people on both sides of this, and that's reality. There's people thinking, well, geez, we just got guidance that says, to avoid having to go remote again and to have quarantine, our kids in a classroom have to actually be more restrictive, but then conflicting for people saying, well, geez, we're just allowing these high risk sports to start and now allowing all these parents. So in voicing what some community members have expressed, and that logic is, I think we do have to acknowledge, and I think having this information for them to realize, just how many people we are letting in the building after we've been so diligent to keep it pretty much locked down. I think it's good for people to hear that and understand the risk is, there's always a calculated risk, with risk to benefit for sure. But I think pretty much opening sports up altogether, I don't think there's many people that are going to disagree that this is good. This is a good move. Kids need to move. They need to stay engaged. They need to do these things. And, numbers are improving. Things are happening, in a good way. So, hopefully that stays that way, but acknowledging those people who do have those concerns, that's something we have to do to express that and really ease their mind so that we have addressed it, because those voices are just as important as the others, and you have to listen to them. So knowing the precautions you guys are taking and what you're doing, and that there is a plan, obviously much more detailed than entering even into a low risk winter sports plan, which is very good for me to personally see. I do think that helps, hopefully, the people who did have those concerns, that rest their mind at ease a little bit, that, and I think with everything moving forward, you're going to have to adjust. If we have a spike, guess what? Everybody has to adjust to it. If we don't, things are going to open up further. I mean, that's kind of where we're going. We just don't know where we're going right now. And my medical mind, unfortunately, I will not be able to take my medical mind out of the equation, and I won't do that. And I will not uneducate myself. So there is always a risk, and our numbers are still there. We are not out of the zone to be risk-free, but it is going in a good direction. So hopefully everybody can feel a lot more comfortable moving forward. So thank you.
So John, moving forward, the 2 spectators per athlete, that came out of the Department of Health guidance, correct?
Yes.
That's what the consensus was. That came from the Department of Health to go ahead with the 2 spectators, and given the risk and everything that we discussed.
Correct.
Sorry about the dog.
And the guidance does come from the Department of Health, and it goes back and forth. And I know my colleagues at the health department, which I speak with on a regular basis, I mean, they're conflicting too, sometimes day to day. They're going to go by the state, then they're going to go by the locals, and then they flop, and then they're all going to agree, and then they're not, things change so quickly. So the fact that NISPA has actually did and publicized that, school districts and boards and superintendents do have the ability to have the autonomy, whatever deemed appropriate for their school. So that is conflicting for people, because it might not be all right for everybody. So when that is out there, people do see that and know and wonder, geez, are we really, going to 0 to 60, 100 miles an hour? Maybe we should look at this a little bit different approach. So yes, that's why some districts do roll into things a little bit differently and slower, and hopefully see things go well. And then there's schools who go 0 to 60. That's fine. But that fluctuating statement from guidelines is contradictory at times for people. So it's confusing.
Jeff, are you going to, how are you going to let players' families know the plan so that they know how to enter and the wait time? Is that going to be through coaches through them, or is it going to be?
No.
Okay.
We're going to meet. We're going to do a parent night like we did in the fall. Right now, we had tentatively kind of set up for Thursday. And I talked to my coaches on Friday, basically went, 10, 12 bullet points. Here's the things that we have to do on a day-to-day basis. Gave that copy, talked about it, went over it. We'll do the same thing for parents, much like we did with the fall. and just say, look, this is how this is all going to work. The expectations, much of which we've discussed here today, same types of things, arrival times and, where you're picking up your child and all of those things. We'll articulate to them and ask for questions and concerns and go from there. But I think we'll lay it out pretty accurately for them and make it something that works for everybody.
And that's going to happen pretty soon then, I would imagine.
Yeah,
right?
we set up this Thursday. Yeah. I mean, really, we need to have it. We need to have it by next Monday. So.
Yeah, right. Should have happened today, right?
Yeah.
Not a lot of time. You don't have a lot of time.
Right.
Any other questions here before John signs us off?
This is not really a question, but obviously, my mind has been put at ease with the good game plan that has been put together. I'm concerned about this coming Sunday with Super Bowl parties. Hopefully, people will use good judgment at their home parties, which is another uncontrollable variable in this whole equation.
I have articulated with my kids, it's, we've been given an opportunity, which 2 weeks ago we didn't think they were going to have. And I just said, obviously you said it well, Tim, that we certainly can't control a lot of those things that happen outside, but I've told them to be smart and be appropriate. And that's all we can do. And, I think that's where that's all we can tell them. So.
Yep, exactly. Keep our fingers crossed.
Just the Chief fans we have to worry about.
John, Jeff, I like the plan, and thank you for putting that together.
Welcome.
Welcome.
It does seem like a good plan, and it's, as everything with COVID, some things we didn't get well, like that return to low-risk sports. I felt like we were a little lacking in our support and planning for that. And that's regrettable, and we can't undo that. But I'm glad that this plan seems much more thought out and that it does seem to contain a lot of support and a lot of cautions and controls. I think those people at the front door and the chaperones will need support to keep enforcing the rules, because it's never fun to enforce the rules on people giddy with excitement over finally being able to see a game. And I do think it's really important, and I appreciate that you're broadcasting it for people at home to watch.
I just want to say, in respect to as things move and if things do, and I hope this will be reiterated to parents, as far as I'm sure everyone's going to be over the moon that they can even see their kids do this, which is great. I'm grateful that they even get a season, period. But this may change, and if that is made aware and let people know, there is an expectation that think this could change tomorrow. Things happen, numbers go up, things start to reverse. I would hope that as a district, we would be responsive to that and do what's best for our scenario. And if that means at some point spectators can't come, games get adjusted, well, I hope people can be gently reminded that that's ever going. This is ever changing, and we will have to adjust and be grateful for what we get, because we never know day to day what we get. So hopefully that can be, impressed upon. Again, all you can do is mention it, but certainly impressed upon for parents, for students, for athletes, for everybody. So.
Any other questions or comments here for John or Jeff?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the work that you did on this, both to John and Jeff, and hopefully this does serve as a roadmap to the other clubs and activities and extracurriculars, and for these kids that are getting this opportunity, that there's other kids in our school that get other opportunities that they're looking forward to. Hopefully this goes well. The parents in the stands, be responsible. John and Jeff have extended themselves for you. Do the right thing in the stands, comply with the plan, and boy, excited to see this go forward.
Yeah.
John, you want to sign us off?